Saturn in your chart is one of the hardest natal placements to overcome. It's all about perseverance, finding your discipline, learning exactly where you sit when it comes to your sabotage. That's right. I see Saturn as part of the idea of the seven sins and where you fall into those places. And Saturn in your chart can be heavy karmic energy. But in this video, I'm going to give you guys this formula, and I call it make Saturn your bitch. That's right. Make Saturn your bitch and finally win your rewards. So the first thing you want to do in assessing your Saturn is seeing if it is in an elemental house or sign. So if Saturn is in a water sign, if your Saturn is in an earth sign or earth house, an air sign or an air house, or a fire sign or a fire house. Because Saturn is a ruler. It is a connector of time and a ruler. And what do rulers and bosses and managers do? They create regulation. So Saturn is a symbol of where you need regulation and responsibility in your chart. Many people see Saturn as against the sun's energy. Saturn has a lot of the stigma around death, okay? And it is very much so helping us to learn how to appreciate life. So one of the things that I have found with Saturn is its connection to sitting and Saturn. And when you find yourself sitting around, you're probably in the heaviest karma of your Saturn. Sitting around literally or metaphorically, meaning you're hesitating, you're not sure to take action, you're mulling over ideas, you're too much in your head, right? Especially Saturn's in the air sign. Or you're actually just physically sitting around and you're not doing anything. This is how Saturn leads you into the downward spiral of the seven sins. This is my theory about this, because somewhere along the lines, you're going to have to recognize that it is this idleness and this immovability that is making your Saturnian karma even harder. It is how you also can deal with victimization, especially Saturn in certain water signs, and it leads you into the cycle where you cannot get out of. For example, Saturn in fire signs, you may find yourself in idleness sitting around because you are so angry, right? And if you do act on anything, it's on impulse. It's never regulated. It's never put into any sort of space. So your Saturn in your fire sign or fire houses, you may deal with a lot of anger, wrath, and you're not sure where to put it. So your actions are all over the place. They're impulsive. They have no direction. And it might satisfy a little bit of you, but Saturn makes things feel heavy because, especially in the fire signs, it just doesn't last. Right? And so Saturn is trying to find its lasting power in a fire sign. And when it doesn't, and when the actions are all over the place, there's this issue of wrath, of anger. Now, yes, you may be angry about certain things that happen emotionally, trauma, all of that. But the anger itself is manifesting because of the wrong type of action with Saturn in a fire house. Now, Saturn in air signs can actually be the mental plane, but it can also be a lot of other aspects. Saturn in certain air houses and air signs can showcase envy, can showcase these issues of slothfulness as well. It can show lust as well. Saturn in the air signs is dealing with a lot of the mental plane. So sometimes when you're in the space where you're not doing enough, you start to think, and this is where it leads you into those places of jealousy and wishing you had something else, things like that. Saturn in all of the placements can showcase its lower side through these ideas of sitting. I call it sitting on Saturn. It's when you're dealing with the most karma because you're not moving in a disciplined and consistent way. Okay. Now you can You can actually apply the seven sense to any of the placements of Saturn in the houses, elemental houses and signs. But these are just the ones that I have found, and I'd love to hear what you think. Now, this is not about punishment. This is not about looking down on you, telling you you're awful, you're an awful person. Though Saturn can lead to a lot of shame, can end up having a lot of shameful outcomes, right? Because we sit on Saturn. And the biggest thing about my passion for this is to really help people awaken out of the shame, because it's when you awaken out of the shame, you awaken to the fact that you're in this alternate world of the deeper side of the seven sins is what I call it. You're in that world, and that world is very enticing. It's very enticing to be angry. It's very enticing to have envy, because you're so coveted by the darkness, right? By the coldness. And it is another world. It's like a flipped upside down world. Saturn and earth signs and earth houses can also deal with a lot of gluttony, with greed, with also envy, lust as well. Absolutely. Because this is the material plane. So Saturn in these placements are going to show somebody who they have lost their connection to their value, their self-esteem, their sense of worthiness, and they eat away their emotions, or they fear of missing out on things, so they overdo it with greed. It becomes very difficult for many people when they're lost in the heavy karma of Saturn, okay? And then Saturn in the water houses or the water signs can also show the seven sins. One of the ones that I think is huge actually is apathy and slothfulness. And this is because of the disconnection from the emotions. When they're so oppressive, they've never had a place to go, they can actually be completely wiped out in despair. And especially like apathy and like slothfulness, it has a lot to do with giving up on life. This is where I say, like, the water signs, they're such transmuters of the dark side of our emotions, right? So especially when I'm talking about Saturn being something that's connected to like death versus the sun, which is life, the water signs can over obsess about the end of things, leading them to the space where they lose all hope in the things that bring life and focus solely on when life is over. So you could obsess about death, you could obsess about yours, about other people's. You can live your life in complete fear, or you can completely cut yourself off and have no sense of a feeling, right? Because you're just too afraid to feel, too afraid to tap into those things. So Saturn seems to be this carrier of death, right? But Saturn specifically, my point is that Saturn specifically, its work here is to help you appreciate life. And when you understand that that's what Saturn's really doing, and through that mode of understanding the darkness, the upside down alternate death-like world, you're able to appreciate life. You're choosing life with Saturn. And this is when the game changer happens. This is when you say, oh, no, Saturn, you're going to be my bitch. Okay, you're going to get under my foot, because I'm going to be consistent. I am going to be disciplined. I am going to regulate myself because I appreciate life. This is some real intense shit, you guys. I started my channel on Saturn, and it looks like I haven't stopped yet, okay? So let's go through the emotional regulations. The regulation formulas for Saturn now, again, through the elements. So once you really take it in your hands, there is a light, there is a life for me to respect. This is when Saturn turns around energy in your chart. Saturn in the water signs and water houses about emotional regulation and emotional responsibility, emotional intelligence with responsibility. Saturn in the earth sign houses material regulation and material responsibility. Saturn in the air sign houses about communicative and intellectual regulation and communicative and intellectual responsibility. And Saturn in the fire signs and houses is about action, regulative action, regulating your action and your sexual appetite and responsibility. Okay, so let's go through this really quickly. When we're looking at the water signs and emotional regulation, this is about recognizing your feelings are going to be real. They're going to come through to you. How are you handling your emotions on a regular basis? What are the ways in which you can actually confront your emotions on a regular basis so you can actually get some real response and power back versus just always being the victim? Saturn in the earth sign houses is about appreciation of material things. And material regulation can be anything from learning how to organize the things in your house to things in your office, depending on where the placement is, could also lead to that, right? Material regulation could be recognizing where it is that you need to upgrade things and improve them, or throw certain things out and recycle them. So material responsibility starts to become huge here with Saturn, Earth sign, and houses. And then now you have the money and the wealth and the respect of it, because you see everybody else around you winning at the material goods, but you are always behind and you're always regressing until you really understand that you're here to put Saturn under your foot and own your material regulation responsibility. And what does that look like? It looks like doing something on a regular basis every day that creates this sense of consistency and discipline towards material things. Saturn in the air signs is about communication, intellectual regulation, and communicative and intellectual responsibility. This is basically how it is that you are communicating with integrity to people without them having to figure things out without you actually telling them. Even if this is small things like, I'm going to go here tomorrow, are you available? Things like that. Being able to regulate your communication with people every day is huge. And a lot of people don't get this, but people who have Saturn in the air sign houses, they can actually have sometimes debilitation or disabilities or fears about being heard and communicating. So until they get over that, they're always just a little bit shy. And especially in the world of social media, Saturn and air signs in the air houses can really fall into those spaces of envy and things like that, because they're all mulling over things. Now, Saturn in fire houses and fire signs, regulation of your action. So instead of being basically a toy to your reactions, you start to regulate what you're doing every day. You start to regulate, okay, I'm going to go here and then I'm going to do this and then I'm going to do this. Right. And this also is definitely a space for fitness, right? Anytime we're going to see fire signs, regulating fitness becomes huge, especially when it comes to sexual regulation responsibility, because the more that you're able to understand the pain and resistance of your body, you become very physically intelligent about your own physique and your own actions. You start to take your actions seriously in the sense that you're not going to do reckless things to hurt your body or do reckless impulsive things to regress on what actions you've already taken. So regulating your actions helps to heal you from impulse and overreactions. And this actually is the key for Saturn and fire signs so that you can actually see your goals. So what I'm trying to say here is that Saturn in your chart is where you cultivate respect. And quite often you're going to see, as we start now going through the houses, that one of the things that you're struggling with Saturn, with heavy karma, is where you have a lack of it, where you have a lack of respect. So Saturn in the first house, at the area of the screen that has the rock, this is your heavy karma, okay? And you'll see the Saturn in the first house, or Aries, they can suffer or have the karma or have the lack of respect of not looking good. The heavy karma with Saturn in the first house or in Aries and not having that recognition of your physical presence and respect of it can lead you down your heaviest karma of all. These are the places where we deprive ourselves and we restrict ourselves, in which you never go out, you never get seen, you never introduce yourself, you never present yourself, because you're spiraling down, which is where we call that the seven sins, in which one of your emotional states are enticing you to stay there rather than show up for yourself and make Saturn your bitch. And what they need is recognition to their body. But if somebody gives you recognition to your body, that's great and all, but what you need is for you to recognize your physical body. You have to recognize your physical body, and you have to take those actions towards what you want out of your physique. Okay? Because the key here is that Saturn in the first house needs and wants to become an athletic authority. In our reality, gaining respect has a lot to do with notoriety, career, business, and industry. And this is why your industry to climb, or the industry that is pursuing you when you gather this respect for yourself, would be the fitness industry. You'd be climbing the fitness industry. Because Saturn here wants you to regulate your athleticism, and because you're going to be doing that, you're going to be primed for the fitness industry. So Saturn being a place of notoriety, right? It's actually a secondary industry to whatever it is that you're doing. Even if you are, a stay-at-home mom, your industry that Saturn is helping you to climb is the fitness industry if you have Saturn in the first house or in Aries. And thus, you actually are giving yourself so much more than just respect, right? You're giving yourself notoriety. You're giving yourself the real respect that you're looking for. Because respect is actually cultivated inwardly from the developing promises that you make. So you make these promises to yourself to become a athletic authority, and you commit yourself to that. This is why Saturn is connected to time, and you're committing yourself to a certain amount of time to develop and regulate your physique. So Saturn is where you spend time doing, and you regulate that time. You regulate yourself doing it. And in doing this, you make Saturn your bitch. So if you would like the worksheets that break down all the formulas of Saturn in the first house or Aries, please check that below. And now let's move on to Saturn in the second house or in Taurus. Saturn in the second house in Taurus, remember this is material regulation. And with Saturn in the second house, you often don't feel respected, valued, and your self-esteem plummets all the time. The heavy karma of not being respected for your value really puts a damper on your self-esteem. And you're constantly trying to get other people to see your value. And this is where you get lost in the upside down world of Saturn, in which, I connect that to the seventh sense. You actually are needing so much more validation than what you're getting that you fall into paths of greed and gluttony, because that's actually a artificial way of validating you. Until you can actually do the work and stand up for yourself by giving yourself the validation, you always will deal with this heavy karma. The thing is, how do you pull yourself out of it? Because there is an enticing need to get other people to like you, to get other people to value you. But as you continue to desire this need, you fill yourself up with the heavy karma, rather than letting it all go and recognizing that the only person who can really see your value is you. And when you're able to do that and make that shift and stop looking for other people to give you the recognition, even if they do, you stop needing it as much. This actually propels you into a space where you can really become your own financial authority. And because Saturn is in a Venus house, this leads you down the path of really working on yourself. So this placement can definitely be a placement where you lack the ability to take care of yourself. Not everybody will have it, but some will. Or you could always upgrade your self-care with this placement. You could always upgrade your self-care, but you never really get it if you're looking for others. So when you make that shift, you start to really take your self-care seriously. And this is a space where you are really learning, right? Now that you have let go of everyone, you're regulating your appreciation of materials, which starts with your own material body. And you're developing and regulating your connection and engagement with your body. So Saturn in the second house, it creates these paths of working on your self-esteem regularly, developing your self-esteem, which also helps you to develop your connection to the material world and your finances. They go hand in hand here because one feeds the other. And the thing with this placement is recognizing that Saturn is where you spend time. You have to spend time doing this work. You have to spend time taking care of yourself. And I know this sounds crazy to a lot of people, but if you have Saturn in the second house, it may not sound as crazy to you. Because Saturn is where we deprive ourselves. And when you're dealing with that lack of self-esteem, you quite often continuously deprive yourself of true value, of true self-care. So when you finally make that switch and you finally decide, I'm going to make Saturn my bitch, you see how that rhymed? You actually spend more time doing the hard work, and the hard work for you is self-esteem. It's recognizing that you need to give yourself the confidence. You need to give yourself the recognition of your value. Until you do make that decision, you can find yourself constantly feeling like you're being punished for, financially especially, for not seeing your value. And you might get paid less. You might really starve from real money making and income, or you might be the type that overworks and overdoes things and you don't get paid for all of the energy that you're putting into it. So this energy really comes down to self-care so that you can take care of yourself in the world of greed, in the world of gluttony, because not only are you a victim of the greed and gluttony, but you're a victim of the world, the shadow side of the world that has that. And they will use you, abuse you, and throw you to the wayside until you start to create value, standards, and boundaries around yourself. This is why I said Saturn in the second house is connected to product making, and it's a very narrow way of looking at it, but it does help you to see like you are the product and you have to take care of yourself. You have to validate and create the high quality materials that make you the product. And these are important things because when you have this level of self-respect, it will be undeniable to other people how valuable you are. And when that shift happens, a lot of things change because the needy you that needed them doesn't need them anymore. And now they can kind of need you. And you can start creating these relationships where you are extremely important and valuable in their lives and they have nothing they can do about it. The industry decline that I see in Saturn in the second house of Taurus, because it's a Venus placement, is the makeup industry. Now, how does this work, right? Because you might be in another career path, you might want another career path, but I'm telling you, this will complement your career path because the work of self-respect in regulating and spending time taking care of yourself is probably going to lead you into something like this kind of energy, the secondary industry of the makeup industry, or like some sort of self-care product. Because Saturn is connected to business. When we have the true self-respect, it goes hand in hand with putting you back into business, into real business. So this becomes a secondary business for you, and it's not to overload you with, oh, now I have all these things to think about. No, this is where the industry might look for you, and the industry itself, the makeup industry, might support whatever it is that you're already doing. So let's say you are a performer, right? Or you're an influencer, the makeup industry might be one of your main categories that help expand you and push you even more over the top because it is the work that you're doing that cultivates the industry to find you. So it can be literal or it can be more figurative, but this is how you make Saturn your bitch, with Saturn in second house in Taurus. And if you would like to go further into this and your placement, check the worksheets down below so that you can actually regulate learning what is happening with you in this placement. And you can keep reminding yourself what it is that you are meant to do. Saturn in the third house is dealing with not being understood. That is the karma that they're dealing with. They feel like they can't speak or they can't be understood no matter how they say it, no matter how easy they spell it out for people. So your heaviest karma that you're dealing here is with people who intentionally overspeak you, like they speak over you. They try not to understand you or they just don't do it. And also, they may diminish or downplay your skills. You can also be a victim of their speech, of their understanding. So you could be in the dark side of this, the heavy karma. It could be people who try to manipulate you through their speech, through their communication. The tendency here could also be to be very impressionable and to forego what you actually have in your skills because you see somebody else has skills and you think that that's the way to do it. And so you may forget your own skills. And so you're really learning how to be inspired by others without being overconsumed by others, because you need inspiration to sharpen your skills. But if you deprive yourself of knowing what you already have, what you're already good at, this is when it starts to get darker for you. And you will be in this place where you're constantly needing recognition of some sort, like, so interrupting people so they can hear you, or, it becomes this constant battle. So honing in on your skills prevents you from just being a mimic of other people. And especially in the world of social media, you can be so impressionable that that's what ends up happening. And you kind of deprive yourself of your own skills and talent versus combining it with others and kind of sharpening your skills to be even better than what you were before. So the key here is to regulate your skill development and to watch out for envy, because this becomes a big thing here in the house of communications in the modern day of social media. You can like fall into these spaces where people are not respecting you, and no matter what you do, your skills are not being recognized. And then you see other people showcasing their skills, winning at their communication efforts. It's not about going viral here in Saturn in the third house or in Gemini that you're dealing with. It's about being understood, which is the stepping stone to that. And so social media has certain elements of it. And one of the very first elements is, do people understand where you fit in, and do they understand what your message is and what you have, right? And what you're saying. So this becomes the issue. It becomes a flipping side where you can be enticed to keep focusing on other skills, keep wanting what they have in their skills, keep wanting to win as they do, and you fall into those traps of envy. You become a victim of it. And so the key here is to develop your skills, as Saturn is where we spend time doing, regulating, even though you may not want to. There can be a sense of smugness, like, I'm already good at this, just people need to see it. But people will see it as you keep sharpening it and developing it. So spend time developing your true skills. And this also helps you to spend time working on your marketing pitches, because you become an incredible agent of help and change to the marketing industry. And even if you are, pursuing a real career of another nature, the secondary industry of having the marketing industry under your belt is going to help you be able to go into any avenue that you like and be understood, be able to get people to speak about you. So letting go of the need for recognition propels you onto this path of finding your divine voice, style, and aesthetic. And developing it over time gives you the respect that you are cultivating, propelling you into an industry that needs your help. So Saturn, this is how you make Saturn your bitch, with Saturn in the third house or in Gemini. And if you would like to get worksheets to go further, check the link below. My best interpretation of Saturn in the fourth house or in Cancer is that a business is like a family. And this is basically the family side of the business with Saturn in the fourth house in Cancer. How is it that we can relate and react to one another in a way where we are foundationally connected, emotionally connected? So Saturn in the fourth house or in Cancer quite often may display the heaviest karma of not having a family, or not having a comfort zone or space of shelter, or some sort of level of nourishment, specifically to food, care, and comfort. This is somebody who may even deprive themselves of comfortability. So they will sleep on hard spaces or on the floor, or are willing to give up, what is their comfort for the sake of maybe not interacting with people or not having to deal with foundational emotional engagement. So you may go ahead and just dive into the seven sins and plummet into a world where you don't feel like you can never get that. You almost assume that you can't. And you emotionally dig deeper into the darker sides of the emotion. With Saturn in Cancer, ones that are kind of agitated, right? Emotions that feel hopeless. So basically, this is someone who can get stuck in emotional depravity. And it starts with other people, right, who are supposed to nourish you, not having the capability of doing it in the way that you need, and becoming scorned, right? Scornful is the path to disrespect. And scornful is the path to disrespect of self with Saturn in the fourth house or in Cancer, because that keeps you almost reacting to the depravity versus being the solution for your own depravity. And it might sound like I'm making it easy, but it's actually one of the hardest things to do, because realizing that others can't give you the emotional safety that you're looking for, it's very, very sad. It's very, very saddening. And when you are not able to see that you have to give it to yourself, you may overreact to the fact that others aren't giving it to you, which only doubles down you being the victim. It doubles down on the heavy karma, because you're not being in what I call the Saturnian attitude. Now, I talk about this in the worksheets, and I will in another video, and Saturn in the fourth house is the first place where I actually mention it in this video. And it's important because the axis of Cancer and Capricorn is Saturn, trying to find its pace, but it's in its opposite energy. So Saturn in Capricorn has the Saturnian attitude, and Saturn in Cancer, it don't know how to find it because it's so wrapped up in the emotion. So the Saturnian attitude is to be cool, calm, collected, and under pressure. But Saturn in Cancer can actually be the opposite of those in the face of rejection, apathy of others, people not being able to give you the comfort, the validation, emotional validation that you need, like saying, it's okay that you're angry. I get why you're angry. I would be that too, right? And you can't express your emotions, and you have no safety in expressing your emotions around people, or specifically it might start with your family members, which trickles into your everyday life. And so you can walk around with a sense of distrust. I think Saturn in all of the water sign elemental houses and signs can have this aspect, but it starts here into Cancer, where we lose a sense of trust that others can hold a space for us in our emotions. And so we actually codependently attach even more, right? So we can either deprave ourselves and be like, forget it, I'm not sharing anything, I'm not showing anything. Or you might attach even more through your reaction. Be like, why can't you just help me? Why can't you just see me for what I'm going through? So it becomes either a complete cutoff or an over codependency to the most toxic responses to your emotions. So when you finally say, okay, I need to do this for me, I need to give myself the emotional validation, I need to make space for that. And you learn to adapt to Saturn, which is time. And Saturn is asking you to spend time on this energy of how to regulate your emotions, how to have a space for your emotions when they are overcoming you, right? You develop and regulate your emotional intelligence within yourself. And this cultivates the true respect you've been looking for. Now, the industries that Saturn is connected to industry, and it's because once you have reached a level of respect, it's without a doubt in the reality that we live in that you're going to be in a space of notoriety, and you become an important agent to certain industries. Now, Saturn in Cancer or in the fourth house, I wrote here the food industry, like housing industry, real estate industry, but it could also be counseling. It could be things like that. So my recommendations on the industry is very narrow, just to keep it simple. But anything that is related to Cancer, you could be a really good agent for that industry, because especially with the food industry and real estate, right? The aspect of Cancer that goes into these industries is overlooked because we just see it as a business. But the food industry has a lot to do with the momentum of being in the family and working in a group of people that understand you and move the way that you do. And it also has to do with nourishing people with food. So this is the aspect of Cancer that is essential, and a really good food and restaurant industry has a huge sense of family and nourishing and feeding and wanting people to feel nourished and fed, which is the overlooked part of the business. So you can become very essential to these industries no matter where you go. You could be somebody who is asked to travel to hotels, asked to look at the interior, or depends on what is it that you've cultivated, the family dynamics of whatever that would be called an industry. Or in housing, like you might be somebody who understands where families need homes. You could be somebody who really helps homelessness. There's so much power in this area that I think can get overlooked. But Saturn in Cancer could be somebody who is integral in helping people feel really, really at home again. And whichever industry or career you're a part of, that will be your secondary thing. You'll be maybe cultivating the catering for whatever you're doing, or cultivating the housing, or where we're going to stay, or what are the architectural spaces that could hold everybody. It might be secondary in that sense, because Saturn creates industry when you have built yourself up through developing and regulating yourself. You will be without a doubt notorious in this field. So that is how you make Saturn your bitch, with Saturn in the fourth house or with Saturn in Cancer. And if you would like to go further, check the worksheets down below, and let's move on to the fifth house. So now we have Saturn in the fifth house or Saturn in Leo. And this placement deals with the need for playing. This is the area that has to do with our joy, our inner child. And the inner child energy is a sun energy that wants everyone around them. They're so warm that they want everyone around them. But Saturn creates this coldness and this feelings and experiences of depravity when it comes to play. And sometimes play becomes the thing that people deprive you of, or you deprive yourself of. And it could actually come from the repressed version or the overexpressed version. So you might be repressed in play, you may not play enough, or it's overexpressed where you played too much and you felt this energy of heavy karma, of maybe even punishment, that you went too far, you took too many gambles, you took too many risks with your actions, creating this need to kind of like enclose and constrict yourself from the play. Either way, Saturn is trying to figure out, how can I regulate play here? But until then, this can be a very lustful placement that really needs to enjoy the consorts around them, because that's the only thing left really that is playful. When you think about a king who has so much responsibilities, that's the human nature of it all, is that, I need to deal with this tension, and I have these consorts, I have these different ways of expressing my lust to feel better, to give me this artificial version of pleasure. So the fifth house has a lot to do with flirtation and romance, and these are the aspects that can be missing with this placement. And it creates these needs to utilize things that will kind of fill the hole temporarily. And so the real key here is spending time. And Saturn wants you to spend time on your play, discovering what are your true crafts and hobbies that fulfill you and bring you joy. This creates the birth of romance. We take that playfulness that from our inner child and connect it with others, and are able to sort of flirt in a way where we interact with others and the world from our inner child. That's really what flirting is, flirting with the world. And so the practical version is to work through your playtime to cultivate a stage for yourself, because you really need a lot of recognition here, right? And this can become overly dominant in the darker side of things, like we just mentioned. And until you give yourself the recognition of what you want to play and how you divinely express yourself and act out your play and connect that to you, you'll always just be looking for others to give it to you. And it's never enough. You'll always need more variations of that, which is okay. That is also a part of this playful house. But to really experience a sense of respect for yourself, respect for others, is to connect yourself to the industry that Saturn can express itself here, which is the entertainment or performing arts industry. Now, no matter what career you're a part of, having and cultivating where you can take the stage, where you can express, where you can perform, or where you can add the element of entertainment uplifts your energy and creates this space of notoriety, of respect from others, because people really do need really good entertainment in art and things like that, because it elevates the human experience and it is essential. So this is a place that can naturally lose respect, I think, because we can often, especially as you get older, you know, neglect what makes life fun. And that's the goal of Saturn. That is how you make Saturn your bitch here, is to respect the fun of life, the true entertainment of life. So developing and spending time, as Saturn wants you to do here, on your hobbies, on what makes you playful, on more romance in your life, is going to cultivate you into these newer paths where you make Saturn your bitch. And you're no longer, the one who's just susceptible to whatever everyone else has for you. And you really experience some king shit here when you make Saturn your bitch in this placement. Really, the true respect for life is Saturn being your bitch here, helping you to enjoy the process of life rather than just deal with it. And so if you would like worksheets to go deeper into this placement, just check down below. When Saturn is in the 6th house, we are dealing with the heavy karma of being jobless. And this could be somebody who actually can have many jobs. They can be very well reliable and a great worker, a great employee. But they're constantly unhappy and unfulfilled with what they do every day. The repressive expression of this would be somebody who doesn't do much, even though they might think that they do. And the more expressive is someone who really is like working their hardest and almost sacrificing their health in order to do that. They need so much recognition for the work that they do that this is what becomes of it. And the need for it is constantly external, which keeps them feeding kind of the darkness that no one sees it. And there can even be a little bit of a pride hidden here in keeping yourself being seen as working really hard. So Saturn in the 6th house or in Virgo is looking for a true profession, something that evens the playing field for you, allows you to settle in to the fact that you are working every day in a space. And it disconnects you from the lower end of things, which are apathy and slothfulness. Envy can happen here with the comparative positions of workers and other employees or other people who seem to be getting more recognition for their work. And you really desire to be somebody who is seen for their work. You really want that recognition. That's what Saturn is here for. And to many people, it may seem really silly, but to you, it can be over serious. So this energy is deciding for itself, what exactly is my profession, which has something to do with the skills that you've learned and acquired and how they are fulfilling for you to do and how they're fulfilling for others. This win-win situation that you have going here. And you can apply this into the job that you're already in, or you can create a whole brand new job of that very thing. So Saturn is spending time, and when you're spending time in the 6th house and making Saturn your bitch, you're regulating your work routines and your overall health routines. This is why health becomes the authority that you are becoming with Saturn in the 6th house or in Virgo, because health is the foundation to your work. And you will see the patterns that people who aren't really good with their health also aren't very great with their relationship to their work. This could be the underlying issue that you are facing, in which if you are falling into paths of slothfulness and things like that, it's a disconnect from your health. When you get back into your health, it starts to dictate your work, because everything based off of how you brush your teeth, to how you improve your daily look and uniform, to how you put your hair together, this everyday thing is the authority of so many people. And so where once you were diminished for wanting to be seen for how hard you worked, because people are like, look at this person like trying to be a slave and not getting paid enough for it, right? That's how they're disrespectful and not seeing you. When you make this flip and you make this connection, you actually represent wealth, the interim of wealth, the lifestyle of wealth. The 6th house has a lot to do with how you contain your income, how you invest back into yourself, how you take care of yourself. And so if you keep the 6th house in the space of developing, this is the actual formula that we use for all of the placements. It has so much of this polishing and refinement that comes with living a wealthy lifestyle. So no matter what career path you take, in developing these work routines and building up your health as wealth lifestyle, right? Basically, you will be sought after and utilized for the industries of health, medical, holistic health, these types of industries. Also, anything that you do in your lifestyle might be seeking you out. So let's say if you do kickboxing classes 3 times a week in your routines, then you might be utilized to be a part of something in that arena. So this is how Saturn in the 6th house gets its redemption, and it really builds its lifestyle in a way that is so fulfilling. So the key here is to recognize that you have the choice, and you have to give yourself the permission to create your daily life. That happens here. And so people will now start to recognize it, because you are clearly living a dream lifestyle, a dream job. So this is the space in our life that takes up the most time for many people. And for you, this actually might be something that you get to be an authority of. So you might change it. You might be able to work less, right? And create shorter hours. Or the profession that you do still has you do long hours, but you are, you're getting millions of dollars. You're being traveling. You're doing all kinds of different things for work. And it's a very satisfying lifestyle when you are doing what you love and feeling fulfilled and helping other people for majority of your time, Saturn in your 6th house. So this is a really interesting placement that gets a lot of redemption when it makes its flip. And so this placement, as you develop and spend time working on your work routines, on your health routines, right? You are going to become a true health authority in life, and health is wealth. And that is the message of Saturn in the sixth house. And that is how you maintain Saturn being your bitch in the sixth house. Okay, so if you would like worksheets to go further, check down below. If you have Saturn in the seventh house or in Libra, your heaviest karma has to do with partnerships. Commitments form a long-term basis. So quite often, this placement can feel disrespected or lose their self-respect in a lot of ways when it comes to partnerships, because they lean too much in needing recognition from any sort of external contributor, any sort of external person, which thus usually happens to be their partnership in the long run. So this is about a personal relatability factor, and it's similar to Taurus's position because it's Venus ruled, in which it's connected to self-care. And for this position, it's the sophistication of it all. So there's a level of having to level up that happens with the seventh house, because that's what the partnership is. So Saturn is where we're spending time, okay? So Saturn time in the seventh house is spending time developing and regulating your collaborative efforts. You're looking for people, vetting people for who are really the best partnerships for you, and learning how to harmonize in these win-win situations. So this actually is on the mental plane because Libra is a air sign, but it's cardinal, and so it also has a lot of its own initiative communications. So this might be you reaching out to people on a regular basis, and almost like interviews, you could even see them as, or like vetting sessions, because this is asking for you to hone in on where you're relatable with someone else. And the better that you get at the skill of relatability, right? And you do it in the way that serves you. So if it's like, oh, I'm not relatable to them, and it starts to go into that I'm not good enough for them energy, then you've lost your way. It's really about, are you both good enough for each other? You start to develop style, and that's really what Libra is. It's the next level of leveling up. And so this is why Libra and the house of Libra, the seventh house, has a lot of connection to becoming a fashionable authority, because fashion actually is a conversation and a collaborative effort between the model and the designer. And this is what Libra expresses. Quite often, people who have overcome this placement, they can become utilized by the fashion industry. Even if they're not a model per se, they could be a translator or a medium from fashion to maybe like an everyday person, or fashion to whatever the modality is, fashion for work, fashion for going out. So you can easily become a medium for those types of things. And it happens with these relationships. And you see that a lot of people who have fashion industry credits, you would say, they have built these relationships. A lot of their careers are about relationships, which is like the secret agent, I think, happening here with Saturn showcasing that, because you're actually doing that way more evidently than ever before, building these relationships. And so when you think of it as you're disciplining yourself to regulate yourself, to spend time discovering your partnerships, your efforts, and even your own fashion style, right? It just goes without saying that Saturn is that, climbing up the mountain. And as you're doing this consistently, your secondary industry is the fashion industry, in which any career that you're a part of, even if you are, for example, a lawyer, which would also fit very well in this placement. And it goes to show that, lawyers are kind of also like utilizing the fashion as a secondary industry. So depending on how you want to utilize this, you will gain a lot of notoriety over time in working through and developing this part of your chart. And you may even be invited to be a part of certain aspects of the fashion industry, which can help propel your notoriety. Saturn is where we're gaining respect. So it's not necessary that we are innately having it, though we do. We absolutely have all of the tools when we're born, but we are learning how to really work with the 3D and mold them in our everyday life. So you have an innate sense of style. That's really the issue here. And when you start to see that, you start to seek less of your partner to validate that for you. And when you think about the partnerships you're going into, there's no question. You are as essential as they are in this partnership. And then when you lock that in, you'll see the notoriety start to manifest with Saturn in the 7th house or Saturn in Libra. So that is how you make Saturn your bitch for this placement. And if you would like to go further, you can check the worksheets down below. If you have Saturn in the 8th house or Saturn in Scorpio, your heavy karma, heavy weight is coming through the need for other people to recognize your seduction, your emanation of your sexual expression. This is somebody who may have undergone restrictions according to these themes, and this is why your need is so codependent of others. And quite often, this can have a repressive expression where you kind of enclose yourself, and almost to the point, if you look at the spectrum of asexuality, almost to the point of that. And it's really a fear of being intimate with someone because of the fear that they don't find you to be as sexy as you would like. Or the more expressive of this is someone who can have multiple sex partners or desire that, so that it actually overcompensates for the fact that they don't feel very sexy. So the more people give them that energy, the more that they can actually feel it and be sexy. So this has a lot to do. This is a heavy karma of sexual identity as well. And I don't mean like, preferences. I mean in how sexy do you feel about yourself? So with this, there are often situations where you are triggered immensely, because this can also have certain trauma factors that can come with this. Not all, but some can. Even, we'll talk on the spectrum. Some of you may have minor trauma. Some of you may have major trauma when it comes to this. And so a lot of this can keep you very stuck, because Scorpio is very much so a fixed sign. 8th house is Scorpio's energy. So it also has a little bit of this, I'm going to stay in the dark of myself. And the biggest thing you're doing is learning how to navigate your darkness. So this is a placement that deeply benefits from shadow work. The ultimate thing, though, that is the advancement of that shadow work is to get out of the shadow work. So you go through the shadow work to understand yourself in the darkness, but you don't want to have to do shadow work all the time. And like there may be bouts of time where you have to sit and develop and work on your shadow work. But the real regulation that is happening here is what that shadow work is doing for you. It's helping you to become indestructible. It's helping you to find your power and helping you to redefine your sexual identity, your sexual appetite, and give you an overall sexual revival. So you are diligently working on your rebirth and being in the space of rebirth. Sometimes this energy can slow down, very similar to Saturn in the opposite energy, Saturn and Taurus, Saturn in the second house, sometimes it could slow down, and that's okay. But sometimes it's moving a little too slow. With Saturn in the eighth house and Saturn in Scorpio, the reason you may move too slow is that you may be wanting everyone to see you make that change. So there might be this deep need for people to see you at your lowest and see you at your best. And you can often feel very defeated in your lowest because you won't get that sexual attention. You're not going to get what you think you should get, which is the attention of the entire journey. And so you come also into the space of a relationship with results. It's a very interesting relationship with results because you will find that people, right? People in general, humanity in general, really does react and give the most recognition to your results. And so that could be very disappointing because what you want is the intimacy. The results feel so superficial. What you want is for them to see how you went through the journey, right? And some of you might not want that. Some of you might be more repressed and not want them to see it. But the people who really suffer here is because you are in this space where you want people to see all of you, because that's the true intimacy. And yet your biggest results may happen when you have results, when you have metamorphosized, not through the metamorphosis. So once you get a real good grasp on the fact that the metamorphosis is for you, you need to recognize your metamorphosis. That's when you develop a really good relationship to your private world, because that's the other thing, that you're spending time, Saturn, in all of the water houses, right? They're spending time with developing also their privacy. And you're going to come to realize that Saturn wants recognition here, but you don't necessarily want recognition to your privacy. The parts of you that are struggling, the parts of you that are, going through the process, that becomes harder for you to deal with the world seeing those parts of you. Though some of you may really want them to see it because you're yearning so much for that intimacy. So how do you achieve real intimacy here? It's actually through the pattern of becoming a power authority. You are somebody who delivers results, and it is your results. If you do trust the process, it is your results that lead people to intimacy, because the results are like the open door for them. When they see you at your final result of whatever metamorphosis you're at the time going through, that's when they're going to say, who is this person? Because the real question is, who is this person who went from this to this? I saw there before, and now I see there after, but I didn't see there in between. And now I want to know. And that is the healthier cycle for this placement, dealing with your relationship to people seeing your metamorphosis, people understanding your privacy. So you're really learning privacy, isolation. With all the Saturn placements are isolation to a degree, but this placement really is learning how to respect their own privacy, and also spending time respecting their privacy, knowing exactly, like, is this something that I share, or is this something that I hold to myself? And those are also other darker things, because in your more heavier karma, you may hold deep secrets. And those are the things that needed help and needed you to go towards someone. So when you're finally in a revival state and you're developing, you might think, oh, well, I used to hold secrets, so everyone should know about what I'm going through now. But that's actually the point, is that you may have developed a estranged relationship, or a very strange relationship to your secrets, and you're learning exactly what you should share because it's essential, because it's about preventing danger, it's about informing people, and then what are the things that you're keeping to yourself because you're too much in the vulnerable space, you're too much in your gestation space for the sunlight to hit you yet, and for the people's attention and recognition to hit you. See, recognition is notoriety, and Saturn in the eighth house has to develop the relationship to notoriety, the relationship to understanding that people will respect you when you have achieved the trophy, and only until you achieve the trophy. And this helps this placement to start get the movement and the momentum going for themselves and unstick themselves once they have that realization. So this is how you make Saturn your bitch with Saturn in the eighth house and Saturn in Scorpio. You actually become a useful agent to the sex industry. And when I say the sex industry, this is also a spectrum. This is like everything from pregnancy prevention to taking care of postnatal treatment and you know, sponsorships, products, and things like that. But also, what makes you sexy? Is it like sexy dancing? Is it taking care of your body? Is it knowing what is healthy for your hormones and libido? You become a useful tool to this industry. And so whatever career path you do take, you know, whether, let's say, for example, you're a teacher, right? You may be, education is your sovereign choice in your career, but your astrology tool with your Saturn in the eighth house or Scorpio may have a spin on that, in which as you develop this and you gain notoriety, that you might be a teacher that help kids empower themselves, or you might be a teacher that is a sex ed teacher or something like that. So this becomes industry vibes with Saturn because it's just the natural way of life. Once you have spent time developing something, you have perfected it to a degree or mastered it, you are therefore now useful to the industry that it aligns with. If you'd like to go further into this, check out the worksheets down below. They break down all the formulas and also have journal prompts for you to creatively brainstorm how you can include this and implement this level of regulation in your everyday life. If you have Saturn in the ninth house or Saturn in Sagittarius, your heavy karma is coming from the need of recognition, for people to hear your stories, for people to hear where you've been. This becomes what you desire because it fulfills you. You are somebody who is learning your relationship to history as one that is profound. But you can often be very stuck because you're never quite listened to like you'd like, and you can suffer with people and your knowing, right? So you could really need people to know that you know things. This actually can lead you to a place where you can't go anywhere. Like you actually are stuck. Because one, you're traveling in the past versus traveling in the present, in consistently being in the space where you're still writing your story. And when you make that shift, that's where things start to unravel for you. And people want to hear your past stories and your past testimony because they're seeing how well you're implementing it in your current journey. So you really are a leader here, developing and regulating your highest perspectives on life and philosophies with people in your current journey. Spending time with people, understanding where you are and what history has brought to you now. Okay, so if you are portraying a version of yourself that is like a Debbie Downer, then you're still stuck in your heavy karma. If you're portraying and regulating and spending time being that higher self organically, right, and then sharing it with others, you now start to gain huge notoriety, and you can become somebody who has strong trajectory, and you can be called to travel and to be a part of new and improved cultures and cultural traditions. And you actually start to get the dream life that you really want here. And that's what this is also. It's a lot about having that higher experience of life. And it really costs you the old version of you that was just trying so hard to share your stories. Okay. So you can become somebody who creates new stories. And no matter the career that you're in, this can lead you to have incredible opportunities with industries that need stories to be told. And this is why the industry that I say Saturn in the ninth house, or Saturn in Sagittarius, is really seeking for you is the tourism industry. This is an industry for travelers, and you get to showcase the experiences of going outside of your paradigm, right? So the other thing that happens here is that you could be somebody who never fits in culturally, because there's aspects of your life that are kind of already expanded and elevated in comparison to the environment that you're in, right? So you can often already exhibit a lot of exoticism, even if you look the same, wear the same clothes, or maybe you don't wear the same clothes, but you can exhibit like being exotic, one of the people in your culture, people around you. And so this can be a way where you're constantly learning how to adapt and fit into different cultures, which at one point you were a victim of, but now you are now really it's your expertise, right? So you're able to be a representation of yourself, of your culture to a degree, and also explore other spaces, cultural traditions, places, and things like that. So you could be in any career. So if you were even a janitor, you could be somebody who has a very important but basic job, right? But you are very exotic. You're not going to be the everyday janitor. You might have aspects of you that everyone is like, this person shouldn't be here. They should be out doing something else. And then you come to find that you can still hold a narrow version of yourself, but also be that bigger version where maybe you're asked to travel, right, to all of the different schools to exhibit your perspectives, your philosophies on being an essential janitor, right? So there's the tourism element that could enhance you even at that level. So this is to show you that you have so much expansion in life, and you're here to really spend time, which is Saturn, developing your expansion, your higher perspectives, okay, and becoming a publishing authority. So you can also showcase and utilize your stories and put them into write books, bigger examples, so that people can really grasp it. Even this is also a house of publishing. If you look at it in the ninth house, and Saturn being notorious in the house of publishing could be somebody who has a series of books, or an artist who releases their art, right, in a series, or some sort of way like that. You can utilize this in micro levels, right? And you can utilize this in macro levels. So there's the constriction of Saturn and the expansion of the ninth house and Sagittarius kind of working together here. So that is how you make Saturn your bitch with this placement. And if you would like to go deeper, right, and study your Saturn placement in the ninth house or in Sagittarius, right, through different formulas like the ones that you see here, then you can check the worksheets down below. If you have Saturn in the 10th house or Saturn in Capricorn, your heaviest karma is connected to the overall experience of needing to be respected. And because of this need and recognition being something that you might output in dominance and control, you can often find yourself in victimized states where you are overforcing yourself and having to deal with the true shadows of punishment, even if this is on a government level or on a more official level or in a level in your relationship to your parents. Things become very, very harsh, and punishment is essential to this victimized state, because punishment means that we do know what's right and wrong, right? And we are abiding by those laws. So you become a victim of laws, and you become harshly treated through these ideals of punishment. And you can even take this on in your practical way of interacting with others, in which you also exhibit some of these behaviors of needing to punish them, even if it's, on a spectrum, discreetly or just in a minor way. And you may live by this more life of punishment versus life of laws, because that's what you learned as a victim. And you actually become very lawless with living by punishment versus living by laws. So your relationship to laws and boundaries is kind of distorted in this heavy karma. And you're having to recognize in the most severe ways, when we say heaven and hell, how it is that you are approaching life in general. And then you could finally give yourself some grace. So making Saturn your bitch here is a soft touch for you, because it's actually a lot about having grace. And if you haven't gone too far yet, you still have a chance to come back and forgive yourself and give yourself grace. And what will really heal you is forgiving others and giving them grace, the ones who taught you how to live by punishment versus by law. So because of this unique, victimized state, you have a really great grasp on the systems of the dark. So you understand like the darker lifestyles of life, and you may understand their systematic ways of being. And you can utilize this to gain your respect, but you're doing it clearly from the space of creating your laws of systems, right? Rather than your systems of punishment. Okay, so you can understand that certain people operate also from this lower place, and you can be someone who helps people to understand that danger is real, and that in order for danger to exist, we have to be strong enough to have newer systems that, yes, it gives us a happy place, but it's also very safe. And all of the corners have been cleaned out, and all of the overall structures of how we're building it are reinforced for safety and for the protection of our goodness. Okay, and so this is how you are developing yourself to gain respect, is by becoming a governing authority. You are a governing authority. And this is something that you have developed already, right? So it's already in you because of your experiences, because of your heavy karma. So now you need to just do the time. You need to spend time, right? Saturn is the construct of time calcified in our reality. And you need to spend your time developing and regulating your reputation. Okay, your reputation is important. In the space of the court of law and the world of punishment, right? Where would you be sitting? Are you the person who is being prosecuted? Are you the judge? Are you the bailiff? Are you the court officer. You want to utilize some of these ideas of what you understand already about how systems are built, right? And you want to put yourself in a titled position in your construct, okay? This is going to help you work on your reputation, because a lot of it has to do with how you see yourself and how you have been seeing yourself being somebody who has operated by punishment. You have allowed yourself to see yourself as like the gutter. And so you now need to develop a reputation, and you can use the systems that you understand and the roles that are played in those systems to really put yourself in the position that you know you deserve because of who you really are. And that's what this is about. This is getting you back to who you really are. In developing a reputation, it's not this facade that people think, when they're aiming for fame. This energy is about notoriety for real. It's about true authority, whether it's seen or not. So you're also developing your inner self-respect, understanding that the promises that you make to yourself and staying in integrity and standing by those things that you say you're going to do, either holding yourself accountable or hiring and finding people, employees that can hold you accountable. These are the things that are going to help you build your self-respect. So going back to that victim state and your heavy karma, some of the things you're needing to do is to develop your relationship with your employees and really knowing who that is and who that's not. Okay, because there's energy here where you might treat everybody in your life as if they work for you. Okay, so there's a level here where you can still implement this level of business between you and the people in your life, but creating boundaries as to who works for you and who is not working for you is really crucial in developing your reputation and your self-respect with people. Okay, and this is also something that you want to spend time doing. You want to harness respect from others. And in harnessing respect from others, you already have been doing this, but maybe more in manipulative ways. So you're learning how to do it in more organic ways. Okay, this helps you to be somebody who really understands how to deal with people, how to position people, how to treat people as if the person that they want to be, right? Versus the person that your hurt self uses them to be. Okay. So when you learn to treat people as how they want to be, right? You become very, very strong in your authority, and they want to give you these titles for real. They want to help you materialize these titles. So no matter the energy or career that you're a part of, you could be having a secondary industry here, right? Because you've been developing this over time of working with construction, architecture, and anything that has to do with building systems. Okay. And it doesn't matter anything if you are a nanny, right? If you're a nanny, you might find that your secondary industry is that you're building systems around the whole way that you handle the business of being a nanny, or how you take care of the children themselves in those systems. This will show up for you as a tool, as an agent of help and mastery versus an agent of karma, of heavy karma. It's coming to you as one of mastery, that you can handle businesses where you're a nanny now, and you can maybe create a nanny business or something of that nature. So that's an example of how this can be utilized in your manifestations. And if you would like to make Saturn your bitch even more than how we just covered here, you can check the worksheets down below. Now, if you have Saturn in the 11th house or Saturn in Aquarius, we're going to look at what your heaviest karma is by the visual here with the rock. Okay. Now, the rock represents what's heavy in your life. And what ends up happening here is that you are some sort of victim on the spectrum of not belonging to a group or standing out in a group. And you constantly need recognition of being a part of a club. And these spaces where you become very, important to certain groups can change and alter your, it can change your frequency and change you into energies that aren't visionary. They're just really stuck on how good you look to people. And you can cheapen and create artificial, and in great ways, artificial versions of technologies that also keep people in the space of social approval in a way that isn't visionary. It isn't connected to humanity. And in some of the stronger spaces and interpretations and manifestations of this, you can be more damaging to nature, to uh, the growth of humanity. And um, it's not leadership, but it's the thing that you're kind of supplying that becomes this kind of agent of rebellion for no cause. And trends can be something that are always happening, but they're just so artificial and it's not based on humanness. So the whole goal of this is to flip it around, is to stay in your notoriety of being a social authority, because Saturn in the 11th house has the capability of already doing this. But it's about recognizing where it is that your need for social validation is cheapening your true connection to humanity. And as you make this shift, you start to tap into the old you, the version of you that was a kid that used to be playful. And it's not the play, but it was the innocence that you're reconnecting to that helps you to navigate this now with a better vision for how you can use what you already have, the technologies that you've already established, the social and organizations that you're already part of, but start to shift it in a way where it has a vision and you are opening yourself up to more broader schemes that can last beyond you, that last beyond you. So it is a lifestyle, but it's way bigger than a lifestyle. The lifestyle represents definitely wealth, but it represents how we are really utilizing our richness, right? So it's really like being super rich for rich sake versus wealth. And wealth has a sense of we in it and community in it. And this is what you spend time doing. You are going to be spending more time regulating your alliances and networks and organizations that support your vision, okay, that support your vision. And this is through a redirection, it is through a mental state that you are doing this and spending time doing this. So basically, you're reinstating your social authority, but navigating it in new ways. And this is why you could be really useful to other businesses and industries that are doing the same thing, whether that is new and modern day apps or aerospace and any sort of technological industries. This might be something that you gain a secondary industry in your pocket, basically, because as you are developing your vision, you are going to be visionary. And these are the industries that are visionary too. Okay. So, for example, if you are a fashion designer, right? And you like to make clothes that showcase a style and show off the body really well and make you look really good in front of your friends and in front of your crushes, right? You've got down the system already of what you and your social approval shadow is doing. And so there's it's not forsaking it, it's utilizing it so that you can also think about what your fashion design is helping. So maybe you want to use more organic products, or materials, I would say, or maybe, and you align with industries that too make fabric that are more organic, for example. So this is just one way of how this can be expressed, but this is how you make Saturn your bitch with Saturn in Aquarius or Saturn in the 11th house. Now, if you would like to go further and find all of the formulas that I have put together for this, for the Saturn placements, check the worksheets down below. If you have Saturn in the 12th house or Saturn in Pisces, then your heaviest karma may be around resting and actually having the rest that you really want to have. So there may be some issues here with insomnia, or also issues with having to rest only when it matters or only when it's the last thing to do. And there can be this sense of being overworked that can happen here. These are people who are very useful to many other people because Saturn here has many gifts that it's bringing in from past lives. And these are people who have an art of surrender that often comes here. And their overworkedness actually comes from crafting their sense of self. So it's through them working that they get that type of conceptualization. So without work, often they don't know who they are. So these can be very overworked people. The other thing is that they have been so overworked that they have to have long amounts of rest and absence. This can be then a time when you're resting, but it's because you're really recovering. And so the relationship with rest and overall is based off of some sort of overcoming suffering versus enjoying life and vacationing and being just really enjoyable with the people around you and enjoying good company and having hospitality, being taken care of. This type of rest is better than being monitored type of rest, where somebody almost always has a grasp over what you're doing, and or someone is the key component to why you can't rest. So this is an energy that is learning how to transmit its life into one that is truly glorious, because it will be shown how good life is based off of your relationship to resting. You have possibly developed these morbid feelings about that, so you can never rest. You could be easily addicted to things, and we all are. So there's no shame here, though Saturn can bring out shame here, and you're dealing with your relationship to that with any sort of addictions or phobias or things like that. So your overarching flipping of this energy comes with understanding that you are healing yourself, therefore you are becoming and are a healing authority, and you are constantly mutating and shifting that idea of what healing is for you. And as long as you're regulating that, you really can have Saturn under your grasp. Saturn is where we spend time doing, right? And then the beginning of this, I talked about how Saturn can be about like sitting around and not doing anything. So as long as you are doing something, you actually are going to be better off with Saturn in the 12th house. But the thing is that you are regulating your intentions behind what you're doing. And you are also ensuring that what you're doing actually heals you and others. So as you're developing how you create these systems of healing for yourself, you are actually able to be notorious and being that for other people. This placement can lead to having mental spirals and being in their own space where they're codependent of a system. And so the key with this is actually small steps, micro steps towards their own independence of their own mental health. But the reality that has to sink in when you look at Saturn, you say rock bottom. The reality that has to sink in with rock bottom, right, is that it is going to take them wanting to have that mental sovereignty, them wanting to be out of that system so that they can create the new system for them to live in wellness. So this can be in various expressions of itself, and I won't be too specific to show any biases, but it's all about finding the system of therapy that truly works for you, but giving respect to life and recognizing that yes, you do need therapy, that yes, that is one of the first steps to getting yourself your notoriety. Ultimately, this could lead you in industries where you are creating businesses of hospitality and helping people to overcome things and recover themselves, right? But in the ways that you have developed that have worked for you. So you're creating these new systems and mutating systems of healing into your own systems and creating businesses off of that. And the sovereignty is that you can choose whatever that is. So let's say that you are a music artist. You know, if you are a music artist, you may make music, but if you have Saturn in the 12th house or in Pisces and you're working on this energy and you're spend time developing your spiritual growth, you're naturally going to be inclined to have more spiritual music. You might get into making music affirmation songs. You might do things that help others to feel better through your healing gifts, the things that helped you to heal. So, this is how you make Saturn your bitch in the 12th house with Pisces or Saturn in Pisces. And if you would like to go further through the formulas that I have to help unlock your Saturn, right? And you also get journal prompts, you can check the worksheets down below.